welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very, very special guest here for the show today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Yes, I am author Sandra Lott, and I am calling from Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Great. Can we go ahead and talk about your past leading up into your not pregnancy, but your past leading up into your present, and what is it that you do now? And let's talk a little bit more about the drug usage within teenagers and adults too.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I grew up in a stable family. And so what hit me when I got married, it was something out of left field that I wasn't familiar with. I wasn't familiar with that lifestyle. My parents were there for me as I needed them. And when I got married, it started off fine. My ex-husband was in the service. It was fine. But once he got out of the service, that's when he went back to an old lifestyle that I didn't know about him. And it got worse. He went back to drinking, and then he got into drugs, and then it got worse. He became an alcoholic and a drug addict, and everything was about feeding that fix. The rages were horrifying. Me and my two children, we lived in a lot of fear, and it was a lot of, we just felt worthless and invisible because every time I tried to tell him that you're hurting us, and the rages that came when he needed a fix, that it got turned around. Oh, it's all about you. And I just learned to keep quiet, because then I didn't want to hear, the yelling. I didn't want to hear the rages coming at me. There was a lot of physical. There's a lot, not as much physical, but there was a lot more verbal and emotional um, abuse. And I lived in a lot of fear, and I didn't realize till I got out of it just how much fear got rooted deep down inside of me. I was afraid that everyone was out to use me or abuse me or hurt me. During all this time, I lost my 16-year-old son to a car accident and had to deal with my ex husband's alcoholism and drug addiction in the midst of trying to mourn my son.
I'm so
Um,
sorry to hear that,
my
Miss
older
Lott.
son, it was really hard. It was really hard to deal with that. I was very close to both of my children. I tried to be mom and dad to them because of the alcoholism and the rages that he would go in. He would discipline them for the right reasons, but in the wrong way. Um, and there was, too much yelling, too much rage. And one time my older son got home late from school, and he hauled off and hit him like he would a man. Um, and yeah, he was drunk at the time. When he was straight, he was fine. He was, a loving husband and father. But this, as the years progressed, got fewer and fewer. Um, I tried to stay because I don't believe in divorce. But, after my younger son, died, and my older son was just having his work problems, he got into drugs, because it was just take him away from the pain. He was wanting
What
something
kind
to
of drugs
numb the
did he
pain.
what kind of drugs did he get into, Miss Lott?
Crack cocaine.
Okay.
Crack cocaine. And we were living in Texas at the time, and so he never brought that into my home. I'm glad he honored me with that. But still, the thought of, a mom who loves her child, and the thought of them living on the streets, it just broke my heart. And this went on for years. And so he dealt with his depression, and I had to deal with, trying to be there for my son in any way I can, because I was scared of losing him.
Yeah.
Um, and it got to be where every time he tried to go on the straight, he tried to straighten up several times, but until it's like you have an infection. And if you just put a band-aid on it and you don't put any medicine on it, then that infection's going to get worse. And so you got to put the medicine, you got to get to the root, you got to talk to somebody. And that's what he wasn't doing. So something would trigger and then he would go back to it. And when he was trying to do right, I was trying to help him.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was trying to control it out
You
of
was
my
trying to control it for him.
yes,
Dream.
because I was trying to help him, move up in the world, and he saw that as I didn't trust him.
Yeah.
It just no, if I helped him, if I helped him get to a place where he could be proud of himself, then I wasn't going to lose him. He wouldn't go back to the streets. Um, and he would come and tell me, he said, someone got killed here last week. It was in a rough part of Austin, and I didn't want to hear that. you know,
Mhm.
I didn't, because it made me even more afraid that something was going to happen to him.
Yeah.
But I still tried to be there as best I could because I know this. I was all he had. Him and his brother were very close. They were 2 years apart, but they were very close. They did everything together as teenagers growing up, and more or less they felt like they're all each other had because they left and they the house because they didn't want to deal with my ex-husband's rages that he went into when every time he needed a fix.
You
And so
know,
this went on for years.
you you had a conditioned response to him raging out and yelling, and it seemed like what he did was he sat up there and he would try to condition you to not say something. That way he can get away with his drinking and his fears and his guiltiness for doing what he did to you. And so it was a conditioned response, but you can continue. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. And so this really went on for years. And finally, I got saved in June of 1998 when I tried to kill myself. I had muscle relaxers for a bad back, and we were living in Bastrop. And I went to the back of our property, and I was like, Lord, I can't do this anymore. And my boys were up at the front of our property with their friends, and they just all of a sudden come back there and looking for me. They didn't have a reason. And afterwards, I got to thinking, it's like, what teenage boys want to go back and find their mom for no reason whatsoever when they're having a good time with their friends? And so I knew that the Lord had sent them to
Yeah.
stop me. See, when you're suicidal, this is something I want to get through to people. If you've lost somebody who've committed suicide, don't blame them. It's not that they didn't want to stick around for you. It's just the heartache and the pain that you're feeling is so dark that that's all you can see, and it numbs you from everything else. And it's like nothing or no one else exists because that's all you can see is that darkness and that pain. And you have to get away from it as soon as you can. And you don't care how you do it. You just don't want it anymore. And God had to change my focus away from that darkness. And he did it with my boys. And they came back there and saw me crying and they hugged me and they said, Mom, we love you. Their friends were right there with them, and that's all it was. And they turned and they went back to the front of the property. And then I heard this voice said, see, if you do this, who will be there to love them? And I didn't know that, but I know I was hearing the Lord, his audible voice, because it was like someone was standing right there talking to me. And then it's like, no, I couldn't leave them with their dad like this. That was a selfish scapegoat. And God was, you know, changing my focus. And it was right then that I said, all right, Lord, I can't do this. I can't do this life thing without you. I can't do this. I can't be here with him and do this. And that's when I started writing poetry at first, and it was just pouring into me like I was taking dictation. But oddly enough, it wasn't until my youngest son was killed in a car accident in 2000 that he gave me my first book to write. And that was called God's Love. And it's the many facets of his love. And it took me years to write. That took me the longest to write.
Mhm.
And it's got analogies of him and my mom in there. My mom died while I was writing this book as well.
All right.
Um, and so I didn't know it was going to turn into what it did,
Mhm.
but the Lord just kept pouring books into me. And now I've just had my 38th book published. It's my very first fantasy book. The rest of them are fiction or nonfiction and children's books also.
Yeah.
Um, and so um, it just, I loved it. Just words on paper, and it's words that to help people, the Lord has given me a lot of books to write dealing with trauma. And I think there's because there's so many people out in the world that is dealing with situations like that.
What's your
And
grade level, by the way?
excuse me.
What is your grade level? Are you associates, bachelors, masters?
I started college and I've only went through 1 year, and so I never did graduate. But I did go back to I did go back to school while I was with Teen Challenge and got certified to be a certified mental health coach.
You know what's
And
crazy though? Your talent is that you've been through it. You know, you
mhm,
can get as much education, but if you haven't been through it, you don't understand. You can read textbook after textbook, but you done been through it and you read the textbook. So yeah, what do you think about that?
that's when people can help, because you can't go to somebody who's never been through depression and they basically life is like living on cloud nine, and then ask them to help you deal with getting over depression because they don't have a clue. And so,
Tell me more about your child having the drug habit and how he overcame it and y'all are like cohesive and powerful now.
well, we've always kind of understood each other because we dealt with the same abuse. And it took him actually, because of just drug related charges, stealing to get his fix. He got arrested up here in Colorado, and that's where he kind of got set straight and he got cleaned out. He got some forced rehab, so to speak.
Good.
And then he went back to the way I raised him. I raised him, trusting in the Lord. And so he went back to his faith. Um, it's the thing that gets through to him is until you get to the root, like pulling weeds out of a garden. If you just cut them off and snip them off, they're just going to grow right back. You got to pull them up by the roots.
Yeah.
If not, they're going to overtake the garden.
Yeah.
Well, that's the same thing with our heart. You have to get to the root of the issue. And that takes talking to somebody, the counseling with somebody. It takes help. And because you got a lot of cobwebs in there,
Mhm.
and it's got to be peeled away like peeling the layers of an onion off, little by little, so you're not overwhelmed, and deal with one issue at a time, and
Yes.
get to the truth.
Yes.
And so he started doing that while he was in there. Then he got out and he got married, and I have this precious granddaughter. They named her Iva Faye. She just turned 2 years old. I never thought I would have a granddaughter because my other son, that got killed, um, I expected it out of him first because Timmy was already starting to go off on the wild side, right before my younger one got killed. And it just totally surprised me, but it just blessed my heart as well. Um, but she's still dealing with her issues. And he says, I don't want to go back to the drugs and alcohol. And so my director, I work for Teen Challenge, he helped get him into the San Antonio Center,
Okay.
um, and of Adult and Teen Challenge.
Great.
And you know, I'm so totally, I work for him, but I am so totally supportive because
Good.
it is a holistic healing. They deal with the whole person, not just your spirit, but they deal with everything. And if you need counseling, they get you counseling. And so he's getting the help. He's getting the help that he needs. Um, and that's the one thing that he has understood. And they're helping. He's understanding a lot more now just how much I've been there for him. Um,
Okay. Yeah, that's amazing. And tell me, like you set up there, you done wonderful things with him, and he's changing every day while he's in this program. Like, do you think that, you know, I think he will be a wonderful counselor, if not psychologist, because he's been there. And like we were talking and discussing before the show, we were discussing the drug problems that stem across America with I said on my show, I was like, well, some teenagers are like selfish because they and what I mean, they're selfish in a good way because they're like a naive type of selfish. And what I mean by that is if they're not getting attention from home, if their father or mother is abusing drugs, they're like, well, I think that I want to, be selfish and start using, or be selfish and start gang banging, be selfish and regress. So what we need to do is do something where we get to the root of the problem, like more indefinitely, to for children between the ages of 12 to 17, where we figure out, well, if it is the parent, how can we take that child from the parent and put it in a him or her in a more productive type, environment. Because if you're going to the ghetto, let's say you're living in a ghetto, and every day your mother may overwork or maybe underwork or sleep all day, who knows how you would be, the environment where you have to carry your books in a pizza box, or your books, somewhere hiding, or what is your input, Sandra?
I think that there need to be more youth centers for those children who have parents that are working, that have people who can be mentors. You know, I've heard of, I haven't heard of it in a while, but have you heard of the Big Brother program?
A little bit, but
Okay,
no.
that was from way back when,
Right.
but that's what they need. They need youth centers, and I know our cities have enough tax money. Instead of lining their pockets, they need to line our children's lives and put a little bit of money in there, which is not going to take a whole lot, to these abandoned buildings that are, I know they can find them all over the place, that's sitting there wasting money. Why not get some people to donate their time and fix them up to
Yes.
become youth centers for the people? And I'm sure there'd be enough people who could even donate some of their time to be in these centers to help mentor our young teenagers growing up, because it's starting in middle school. It's starting before they get to high school, where drugs are being introduced to them. And it's for these latchkey kids who don't have anybody at home. And so they're seeking out attention in whatever avenue they can get.
Tell me about these self-soothing books that you've written and how many of them you've written.
I've written, so I've just had my 38th book published. It is my first Christian fantasy, and it is a romance that's got a lot of symbolism in there. And I just had to go online and research, how do you write a fantasy book, because it's not my genre. But um, I'm really excited about that. Um, and yes, it was my 38th book. I've written nonfiction and fiction. So I have one book that's called Repairing Broken Walls, Restoring Joy and Peace. And it's repairing a broken heart as well as taken from the book of Nehemiah and Ezra, and how they rebuilt the broken walls of Jerusalem, walls and gates of Jerusalem, and the temple. And it's the process that they use, and it's going back to the beginning of where you first got hurt. And so I walk you through the process. There's a study guide that goes with this, because you can't just start. You got to go back to the beginning. Where was that first onset? That first, like kids, drove you to doing drugs. You got, because usually it gets built on from there, and so that's what that deals with. So I have a few devotionals and a lot of fiction books. I have books that are dealing with trauma and abuse. Ride the Wind and Safe in Papa's Hands.
Tell
These
me about
are
Silk in Papa's Hands. Tell me more about that one.
okay. That book originated. I love the way the Lord gives me
Mm,
a book. The name just drops into my spirit, or I'm reading something and it just, so me and my new husband right now, Sandra Lott is my pen name. God just gave me somebody that just treats me like a princess. And actually, this was prophesied over me. I was at a speaking event, and this lady, and she just started talking to me, and her voice changed, and I knew that I'm about to get a word from God. And sure enough, she told me a bunch of other stuff. But she said, God's going to bring you someone in your life that's going to love you the way you deserve to be loved. And by the end of that year, I met my now husband through our publisher, and he treats me like a princess. So people, there is someone out there for you everywhere. You don't have to live through abuse. There's help out there. You know, pray, ask, go ask somebody. There is help out there. Go to your nearest church. They can point you to a direction where you can get help from abuse. You don't have to live in it. You are worth more than that. Getting back to the books, though, that is my heart, that people don't have to stay in an abusive relationship. But Safe in Papa's Hands, that came from, we were on our way to Arizona, just taking a little vacation. And in the airport, a poem just dropped into my spirit, Safe in Papa's Hands. And so that's going to be a book. So it's about two different women who go down the two different paths of being, getting into abuse. One was from her own bad choices, and the other was from somebody else's bad choices. So, because we can make our own bad choices and we can get into stuff. We can't always blame other people. Sometimes we make the wrong choices. These young teenagers, they don't have to go get involved in that gang. They can think, it's like, is this really going to be what I want to do? And so we make bad choices, and we can't blame everybody else. Yes, there need to be more parents at home being the parents that they should be, but still, everyone has a choice. And so that book comes from that direction. It tells both women have, getting abused, but one's their choice. One was from an abusive relationship, and they end up meeting each other and end up, finding healing together in the process. Then there's another one that's Jeremy's Journey. This is about a young kid that was molested, but he kind of, when he was a child, anybody forgets it, and he's triggered by an article in a newspaper of the guy who molested him getting killed. But see, he's blocked it, and so he needs someone to help walk him through the healing process. I really treasure counselors because they help you to walk through that process that you just can't do on your own when you've got years of hurt in you. And so he ends up living on the streets, gets arrested, and in jail. He gets delivered and set free.
where do you see yourself going? Well said, by the way. Where do you see yourself going for the future?
For the future, actually, I went through, ministry, I call ministries, and I became a licensed and ordained pastor. Um, was actually licensed a few years ago, while I was in Texas, but never could get up here where this, ministry is to have the ceremony. So actually, I just had my ordination ceremony this past weekend. Um, and so right now, I'm assisting my pastor at the church I go to, Colorado Springs Christian Fellowship,
Okay.
and I assist her and the associate pastor there in preaching. But for right now, I'm trying to get back into Colorado since I just moved up here a year and a half ago. I was doing speaking events, so I'm trying to do more of that. And trying to get those doors open here in Colorado to do more. Um,
How are
and
you
just,
doing that, Sandra?
huh?
How are you getting doors open in Colorado?
Well, mainly through a group that I belong to, Christian Women Speakers group, and they have did an email blast. So they've done an email blast. So a lot of it is through email and through other sites that I belong to get speaking events. I'm still getting to know people, still getting to know the people here. So, and get my name out here in Colorado Springs. I'm still relatively new.
Have you ever
But I
heard
love to share my testimony.
Have you ever heard of what is it called? EIN press wire? Like they give you actually a free press release.
Yes,
Free. Yeah, they do free, like bone dry free.
yes, yes, we've used
Good.
them.
I used them
Yeah,
yesterday.
yeah, I've used them. Yes.
Okay.
So that's where I really want to go because I love ministering to people and I love, sharing my testimony. I'll speak on whatever topic they want, but most people do request that because people need to hear that there's hope out there for those who are hurting and who've gone through the same type of situations. My heart is also in helping women, ministers to the women in prison. I want to get my foot in the door there.
That is a tough job, but I get it. You deserve it. Um, I wanted to know that only a strong woman like yourself can do it, but I wanted to know how can the people reach you?
Okay, we have a website, and my husband and I do a podcast together. It's called You Got This. It's on our website, but it's on iHeart, Spotify, and wherever most podcast, and it's voice only podcast. Um, and our website is called Your New Life Ministries. So they can go on yournewlifeministries.org and they can contact us or they can email me at info@yournewlifeministries. And they can find all my books on our website, and my husband has too. That's how we met through our publisher, believe it or not. And that's a story in itself because I was so still built up in fear. I would never meet somebody online, but we just, he's asking me about the publishing business, and I want to help everyone. Don't think when you just first get published, you're going to become rich. That's just not going to happen.
True. That's
Every Everybody's got their cut. Your publisher has their cut. Then the avenue that you go through, whether it's a brick and mortar store or it's online store, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, they're going to take their cut. By the time everybody takes their cut, your royalty is puny. So
yeah. I want to.
um,
Do you
you
have
got to write for the heart.
Do you have anything for 1 minute that you would like to say to my audience?
Yes, parents, love your children. Make the time for them
Yeah.
because when it's too late, you'll never get it back. I lost my younger son at the age of 16 in a car accident that I didn't know was going to happen. He
Oh,
took the
well,
keys off my table when my ex-husband called to say he wanted to ride home from the bar, and I ran after him. Something told me to run after him, but I didn't get him.
mhm.
And then I got that call a little bit later that he'd been in a car accident and he got killed. And so parents, make the time for your children because you don't want gangs raising them. You don't want them going down the avenue of getting into drugs where they can OD. And there's so many harsh, getting worse and worse fentanyl, that people are getting killed from that. You know, gang fights, gang violence, they're getting killed from that. Raise your children so the gangs won't. Make the time for your children. They're worth it. What is making all that money if you lose your children? You can take a little bit of time from your job to say, you know what? This is family day. This is family day.
Yeah.
Because take it from me and from experience, I'm not a day goes by that I don't miss my son. And then for those who are being abused, you don't have to take it.
Well
I came
said.
from that lifestyle, and look how the Lord turned my life around. There's help out there.
Well said, by the way. I want y'all to do me a favor. I want you all to close your eyes and give Miss Lott a round of applause. She's a very smart woman, and she's very strong, and she's smart from leaving her first husband. So yeah. I just wanted to say thank you guys. Thank you, Miss Lott, for joining my show. You guys take care, be safe, and I'll see you guys another time. Bye.